Thanks for tuning into my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It doesn't cost you any money, but will help me out tremendously. Thanks in advance. President Joe Biden announced Sunday that he will end his presidential re-election campaign, bringing an abrupt and humbling conclusion to his half-century-long political career, and scrambling the race for the White House just 4 months before Election Day. Biden, 81, could not reverse the growing sentiment within his party that he was too frail to serve and destined to lose to Donald Trump in November. He backed Vice President Kamala Harris to replace him as the Democratic nominee. This election is crazy, Trump getting shot. I have a feeling it's going to get crazy.
Another twist in what has already been a historic election cycle. President Biden says he will end his re-election bid. In a letter just released, the president writes, "It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president. And while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term." Now, the president says that he will address the nation later this week. President Biden right now at his home in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. As you may recall, he contracted COVID last week. CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent Robert Costa joins us now for the latest. Robert, what are your sources telling you this afternoon?
Good afternoon from Washington. This was a deeply personal decision for President Biden, something that he has been reckoning with for weeks since that debate in Atlanta, Georgia, where many Democrats believe he did not perform in a way that provided the party with confidence as it heads toward the November election. But for the last few days, President Biden has been talking to family members, talking to his top advisors, and been thinking about the political future ahead of him for both the party and his own presidency. And this has been a heart-wrenching decision, I've been told by Democrats, as he has thought it through. He has wanted to stay in the race, but this is now the first time since March 31st, 1968, when Lyndon Johnson decided to step away from the Democratic nomination, that you have an incumbent president deciding just weeks before the convention in August in Chicago, just where it was in 1968 as well for the Democrats, to move away from the nomination, to open it up. This creates a moment of enormous uncertainty in American politics. President Biden's letter does not detail any preordained successor he has in mind for the nomination. In fact, in his letter to the country, he says to my fellow Americans, "I will offer more thoughts about my decision later this week in an address to the country." But he decided to make this decision from Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, a place that is so special to him, a retreat for him personally and politically going back a half century. He is there with his family thinking through all of this. But it now raises the question, who will be the Democratic nominee for president? The most likely successor in this compressed time window is probably Vice President Kamala Harris, based on my latest reporting, talking to top Democrats. They believe that could be the easiest way for Democrats to move toward the convention and have some unity, and then have some kind of canvassing for a vice presidential candidate. At the same time, there is some uncertainty in the party about whether Vice President Harris is best positioned to beat former President Donald Trump, who just days ago, last weekend, survived an assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. This is a tumultuous moment, a decision that was so personal for President Biden. I was being told as late as yesterday and this morning that the president wanted to stay in the race. He had been chasing the presidency really since he was elected to the Senate in 1972 and endured personal tragedy when his wife and child were killed in a car accident. This is another moment in a career that has spanned so much of the American story, and now President Biden withdrawing from the Democratic presidential race. It's notable, though, that President Biden in this decision has decided to stay as president of the United States. He will not resign from the presidency. The last president to do that was Richard Nixon in August of 1974. Following the Watergate scandal. President Biden managing foreign policy, a war in the Middle East. He's monitoring a war in Eastern Europe. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has been a major part of his presidency. He says he will remain in the presidency despite being age 81 and having some concerns among Democrats about his health. But this is a churning moment. There's still a lot to be decided on the political side. But at least personally, talking to Biden confidants, This was a decision that was not arrived at lightly, but it came under intense pressure from Democrats for him to step aside.